Hi you guys, my name is Caitlin and welcome back. Today I'm going to be showing a tutorial on how to make this cute purse. I absolutely love it. So I'm going to be showing you how to make the actual purse itself, this cute flower charm, then the lining as well for the purse. So this is going to be an absolute beginner's guide. Like if this is your first time picking up a crochet hook, that's okay. This purse is super easy to make. It may look kind of daunting, like there's no way I can do that and it'd be my first time, but honestly it's super easy to do. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need is a 5mm crochet hook. You'll also need a darning needle, a pair of scissors. Okay, so now that you have that, next thing you're going to need is some kind of fabric, whatever color you want. I mean, it all depends on what colors of yarn you're using. And honestly, you could skip this step altogether if you're not comfortable sewing fabric on crochet. I bought this pack of fabric at Michael's and I believe it was $12 or $11.99, something like that, and it came with these ones and also the fabric that I used for this purse. So you'll need fabric. The next thing you'll need is yarn. So this green one is going to be for that little flower pendant that's going to hang off your purse. So I'm going to be using that one, and any green will work. Any green that looks like a green stem or a green vine is going to be fine. I'm going to be showing all the colors of yarn that I use to make this purse, but you feel free to use whatever yarn. You could do one color, you could do 10 colors. It doesn't matter. This purse is so versatile on how you can make it. That's what's awesome about this. So I used this one, and I don't have the paper to tell me what the color is, so I'm gonna just look it up after and put it on screen here. Then I also used this Big Twist twinkle yarn, and I thought that I just love this yarn because of the twinkle effect in there. And all of these yarns are medium 4 as well. So this one, I also used this pink here, and that color is medium rose. Also, this twinkle yarn was light pink. I forgot to share that. Then I don't have a whole lot left of this color, but this one is by the Loops and Threads, and it is neon pink. That is what I used to achieve this look. And basically what we're making is just a granny square. It's a granny square stitch. And then there's the flower. So without further ado, let's get started. Also, if you hear a baby, that would be mine. He's a little Velcro baby, so I'm gonna try and keep him as quiet as I can, but he likes being next to mama. I'm gonna be starting in this Big Twist twinkle yarn. Also, I am left-handed as well. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is start with a magic ring. Now, to do that, what you're gonna do is take your strand of yarn and take your 2 fingers, and you're gonna wrap it. Actually, I'm gonna pull this down a little bit. So you're gonna wrap it like this and then cross over so you have an X, and make sure you're holding on to this loose strand right here, and then this strand back here you're gonna wrap over and take this finger and just hold it like that. So make sure you get a little comfortable first at trying to make this magic ring, and if you really cannot figure it out, there are alternatives out there, like I think the chain 2 method, but when I first started, I'm like, I'm gonna just learn this magic ring so I'm never struggling again. So once again, I'll show you. So you take your yarn and your 2 fingers, set it there, wrap it around, and make an X. And then wrap it around again and hold on to that there. So make sure you're holding on to this string and the string that you wrapped around. Now you're going to take your hook, we're going to be going under this yarn here, and oops, hold on, I'm going to make my X a little bit better. And forgive me guys, I'm trying to like look on my phone. So this is kind of different. Anyway, you're gonna put your hook under both strands of yarn, and then we're gonna want to pull this strand of yarn under this one. Okay, strand of yarn there, pull it through, and then you can even let the loop go, but make sure you're holding onto it, and then grab that strand of yarn here too. I'm not sure if that's easier or not, but if my tutorial on this isn't making that much sense, try and find somebody else's as well to see if maybe they can explain it a little bit better. I can also show the chain 2 method as well, if that's a little bit easier. So the chain 2 method is you're just gonna take your yarn and wrap it around your finger like that, and make sure you're holding on to both strands of yarn, and pull the furthest one pull the closest one that's towards your palm over, hold on to it like that, and then pull the other one over to make a knot. Put your yarn through, put your hook through, pull it closed, and then you're going to loop over and chain 1 and chain 2. You're going to take your hook and go back into that first chain, grab your yarn and pull through, and then pull through again. And then that is one way to make a magic circle. Okay, so now that you have your magic circle, the very first thing we're going to do is take our working yarn and we're going to chain 3. So hold on to your loop here and get your strand of yarn, working yarn ready. And you're just going to pull up a loop here, or grab your yarn and pull through that loop. And you're going to do that for a total of 3 times. So that was 1. This is 2. And this is 3. So you should have a small chain here that has 3. 1, 2, and 3. And now we're going to do 2 double crochets. So how to make a double crochet is you put your working yarn around the hook, and then you're going to go back through your magic ring, grab your working yarn, pull it through, and then you can even slide your yarn down here as well if that makes it easier. You're going to grab your working yarn again, and we're going to pull it through the first loop and through the second loop like that. And now you should have 2 loops left on your hook, and then we're going to grab the yarn again and pull it through those 2 loops, and that is how you make a double crochet. So I'll show you again. Yarn over, and I'm going to pull my magic ring a little bit smaller so it's easier to work in, but you don't want to make it too small so it's hard to put your hook back through. So for the second double crochet, you're going to yarn over, go through your magic ring, pull the yarn through. Now you should have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over again, pull through the first 2, and you'll have 2 left. Yarn over, pull through 2, and you should have 1 loop left. Now we're going to be doing clusters of double crochets, and we're going to need 4 in total. So that chain 3 was your very first double crochet. So after this, we're going to be making 3 double crochets. But since this chain 3 is considered your first double crochet, we just needed 2 more. So now that we got that, we're going to make a corner. And to do that, all you need to do is just chain 2. Now I know some people chain 1, but I like to chain 2. Alright, so now that we got our 2 chains, we're going to do 3 double crochets again. Yarn over, go through your magic ring, grab your working yarn, pull it through. You should have 3 loops on your hook at this point, and you're going to grab another loop of your working yarn, pull through 2. You'll have 2 loops on your hook, grab your working yarn, and pull through 2 again. And there is another double crochet. And once you get the hang of this works up so quickly. It's just getting the hang of it, and honestly, starting is, I think, the hardest part. But once you get the hang of it, you can make a million of these. So we're going to need 2 more double crochets to make this cluster. So again, yarn over, go through your magic ring, pull up your working yarn to make a loop. You should have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over again, pull through 2. You should have 2 loops on your hook. Pull through those 2 and you'll have 1. And then we're going to need 1 more of those. And then we'll have your second cluster of double crochets. So we can scoop that over, and as you can see, that kind of makes a corner. So now we're going to chain 2. 1, 2, and then we're going to do 3 double crochets again. So yarn over, go through your magic ring, pull up a loop, go through your first 2 loops, and you should have 2 left, and then pull through those 2 again. Now, if you still need a little bit of help, feel free to rewind and then do this for a total of 4 times. So you need 4 clusters, so that we already did 2, and I'm working on my 3rd, and then I will meet you guys back here when you have a total of 4. And remember, the pattern is 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, chain 2. And then once we get back to this side, I'll meet you guys. Okay, so now that we have our 4 clusters of double crochets, kind of looks a little wonky, but it'll look like a square once we pull our magic ring shut. So that, just pull that strand that you started with. We're just going to pull that shut like that. You can give it a good tug. And then as you can see, we have a mini little square. Now before we connect these 2, we're going to chain 2. So 1 and 2. And then when you look at where that chain 3 was, you'll see the top of that, which is there. Let's see, I'll show you. So here's our chain 3, and then there's the top of it. We don't want to go into that one. We want to go into our first double crochet, which would be this one right here. And as you can see, if I pull that apart, you can see it's nice and big. So I mean, you can go on this chain 3, the top of this chain 3 if you want, but it's going to be a little difficult. So it's not going to mess your project up if you go into this nice big one here. You won't see the difference at all. So we're going to grab our loop again, and we have our chain 2, and we're just going to slide our hook through that top of that first double crochet. Well, technically second, but our first real one, and we're just going to pull our yarn through, and we're going to slip stitch. So all that means is we're not grabbing more yarn, we're just pulling that yarn through, that working yarn through, and then we're pulling it through to the other side like that. And now you have a completed square. Now, we're not working, what I love about this project is, or what I love about Granny Square is, we're not really working into stitches. So this comes up incredibly quick. We're going to be working into these big holes here. And as our square gets bigger, there's going to be more holes. So since we connected our square here, we're going to want to work into, or we're going to want to get into this corner here. So what we're going to do is grab our working yarn here and just slip stitch into this one, slip stitch into this one here, and then slip stitch into your corner. We're just going to slip stitch into that second double crochet, pull it through, and then into your corner and slip stitch. All right, so now that we're in our corner, should be in that big hole. So now we're in that big hole or that corner. We're gonna do the same thing as when we started. So we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, and we're gonna make 2 more double crochets. So yarn over, go through your corner, pull up a loop, pull up another loop, go through those first 2 loops are on your hook, and then go through your second set of loops. We're going to do that one more time. Two loops, these other 2 loops. Okay, so now we have our chain 3 and 2 double crochets. We're going to want to make another corner. So in order to do that, we're just going to chain 2, and then in the same corner here, we're going to do 3 double crochets. So there's my first one. Here's my second one. And there is my third one. Okay, so your square should be looking like this right now. So yeah, you can kind of see the beginning of that first corner. And it's just going to be pretty much that. So now that we have our corner, we're going to be working into this corner now. So we're going to be skipping these double crochets. We're just going to go right over them and go into this corner. And we're going to do another 3 double crochets, chain 2, and another 3 double crochets all into this corner to make another corner. So yarn over, go through that corner, pull up a loop, go through 2, go through 2 again. We're going to do that 2 more times. Second one, there's my third one, and then we're going to chain 2 and 3 more double crochets. Okay, I just realized I was putting my double crochets in the wrong corner. So I just pulled my double crochets out and fixed that. So I'm going to redo that. I'm going to chain 2 and put 3 more double crochets in. Alright, so now this is what it should look like. Should have 2 corners. In those 2 corners, you're just building corners right now. Alright, I'm going to finish these other 2 corners and then I will meet you guys back at this point. Okay, so now you should have all 4 of your corners, and you should have something that kind of looks like this. So now that you have this square, you're just going to once again go into that first double crochet, which would be this one here. Actually, no, it'd be this one here, sorry. So that's your chain 3, and then this would be your double crochet here. So you're going to put your working yarn into there, and just basically you're just going to slip stitch like we did before. And now we want to be back at that corner again, so we're going to slip stitch into here and then slip stitch into that corner. Okay, so now that we're back into that corner, we're going to chain 3 again, pull up a loop, and you're going to make 2 double crochets. All right, and then we're going to need to do a chain 2 because this is a corner, so we're going to make a new corner. Chain 2 and then 3 more double crochets all into that same corner here. All right, now you have made another corner. So since we're on our 3rd row now, these new holes have appeared. And that's just basically to help increase your square. So we don't want to skip over these holes, or else we won't have a good looking square. I'll just say that. All we're going to do in these holes is just another cluster of double crochets. So we're going to do 3 double crochets in that hole. 1, 2, and 3. And then now that brings us back to another corner. So again, the corner is 3 double crochets. And then you're going to chain 2. And then another set of 3 double crochets all into that same square. All right, and then we're on the other side of the square now, and then you'll see that hole, you'll see that other hole between your corners, and you're going to put a cluster of double crochets in there as well, 3 of them. So we'll do that quick. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and then you're going to do your corner again. And that's basically it, all the way until we get to this side. So our cluster, corner, cluster, corner, cluster. So you guys go ahead and do that. I'm going to finish off camera, and I will meet you guys once we get back to our starting point. Okay, so now that you have finished that and you're back at the beginning, once again, all you're going to do is just go into that first double crochet. So you're going to skip the top of that chain 3 and just work your way. Sorry, my camera is not wanting to focus. But here's your chain 3, and you just want to go right into that double crochet, the top of that, right in there. All right, so let's join that together. Slip stitch. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so far you should have 3 rows now. This is your first, second, and third. Now I'm going to actually change my color. So if you're not going to change color, just slip stitch and then keep on going, and you can make this square as big as you want. This is what my square looks like for the purse. Here's the purse. So you'll need 3 of these panels or squares, whatever you want to call them. And I did 11 rows. You can count that by 1, 2, 3. I just go all the way up like this. And I did 11 of these. So since I did 3 of the pink, I'm going to switch over to the dark pink and do 2 rows of that. So I'll show you guys how to change color. So to change color, you're going to slip stitch into that first double crochet. I don't know why my camera is so... Here we go. It's just not wanting to focus. So you're going to want to slip stitch into that first double crochet, and then we're going to cut our yarn because we don't need this anymore. Just pull your hook through like that. And then what I like to do, so I don't hate myself later, I like to sew on my ends as I go. So it's not something I have to go back to later on, and that makes me lose motivation right away, is sewing those ends in. I'd rather just pick something else up and start working. So we're just going to put our yarn on our darning needle and just kind of go wherever feels like a good snug place. There's no wrong or right way to do this. I just kind of go through and just kind of go like up and down all around so that it doesn't pull out that easily. I usually do about 3 times, and I'd say that's pretty good. And then we'll just snip our yarn as close as we can. We're going to do the other side as well. Go back to here. Then I just kind of go through these corners here. Alright, I'll do that one more time. And that should be good and snug. I don't think that's going anywhere. Alright, now let's do the color change. So my next color I'm working with is the medium rose. So I'm going to just get situated here. So what I like to do is start in one of these corners. Doesn't matter which one, just pick one. And make sure it's not like one down here, but one up here. You want one of these corners. And make sure you got 3 double crochets. Make sure you have 2 clusters of your 3 double crochet sets apart. Because you don't want to go into like one like that. You want to make sure you're going into your corner. So what I like to do is just grab my crochet hook, go into my corner, grab my working yarn, place it on my hook here, get a good hold of my yarn, both strands, grab my work, and we're just going to pull it through that corner. And now that you have that loop, we're going to slip stitch like that, and then we're going to pull that loose tail down, make it nice and snug. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then what I like to do is I like to take that loose strand of yarn and hold it up against my work here, and while I make my other 2 double crochets, that kind of helps. I don't know, I feel like it secures it more. But if you're like doing this as absolute beginner, just feel free to leave it down. You're gonna weave it in anyway, so it's gonna be snug either way. But I just like to do this as an extra measure. So now 2 double crochets, and remember this is that yarn that I'm just kind of keeping up against my project there, so we're not working with it if that's confusing. So first double crochet, second double crochet, and then I'm going to drop this tail end here. We're going to chain 2, 1 and 2, and then you're going to do another set of 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so now once you get that corner done, you'll see another 2 holes, I should say, before you get to your corner. And then make sure you're working into these holes, doing the 3 double crochet clusters into each of those holes while you're working closer to the corner, because it's going to help you expand that square so it can keep getting bigger and bigger. Alright, so that's basically the gist of this. I'm going to do 2 rows of this pink, and then I'm going to change color, and in total I'm going to be doing 11 rounds of this. Oh, well, of my different colors. So you just kind of play around and see how you like your colors. And then you don't have to do 3 rounds. You could do 5 rounds, you could do 10. I ended up doing 11 to achieve this look. I'd recommend making 3 of these squares, and then every time you do a color change, you can work on each square, and I just feel like that would be easier, and then you can be done, you know, instead of like constantly having to start over. It's just, that's how I do it. I'll meet you guys back here when you have as many rows as you want and you feel like it's a good size, and I'll see you guys then. Okay, so now you guys should have 3 panels made. So I have my 3 here, and they each have 11 rows. So now we can get started with sewing everything together. Okay, so to sew everything together, you're going to take the color of yarn that you ended with, or if you want it to be different, you can do that as well. So this is the color that I started with and ended with. So I'm going to be using this color. What you're going to do is take your working yarn, get that ready, whatever color you're going to use, and we're going to grab 2 of these panels, and we're just going to line them up and get them to where they're super lined up like this. You want them nice and even, and we're going to be starting in this corner here. So we're going to take our yarn, and there's multiple ways to do this. If you want to cut a long strand of yarn off and just kind of weave them in back and forth, you can do it that way. But what I like to do is do a single crochet all the way down, and I like the way that I like the end result because it's kind of like a bumped texture. Is the best way I can describe it. You'll see what I mean once we get done, and I can show you then. I'm going to zoom in close. We're starting on those corners there, and we're going to line them up together. Get our hook through both of those. We want both of them on the hook. And we're going to take our yarn and put it on the hook as well. We're going to grab both of our strands and our 2 panels, and we're just going to pull through both of those panels. You should only have 1 loop on your hook. We're going to take our working yarn and we're going to just do a slip stitch like that. Alright, now once again I like to take this loose strand here and just work over it as I go, because then that means that's one less thing I have to sew in. And also, side note, make sure all your ends are sewed in as well for your panels before we start doing this. I forgot to mention that. Alright, so to begin, we're going to be working in, take my hook out so I can show you. We're going to be working in this stitch here that's closest to us. And then on the other side here, we're going to be going into these back loops, if that makes sense. So I'll show you what I mean. We're going to start off and make sure that slip stitch is nice and secure. So I'm going to go into this back loop here, And then on the other side, go into that back loop. So it should look something like that. And then I'm just putting that yarn end, or that end, on top so it can be worked in. And then we're just going to pull our working yarn through those 2 loops, and then just make a single crochet like that. So we'll do it a few more times so you get a good idea. So we're going into this back loop here, and then on the other panel we're going into that back loop there, like that. And then I'm just putting my tail end up on top, pulling through 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through both of them, and then that'll start to make single crochets. And we're essentially just doing that all the way until we reach the other end here. Once again, going into that back loop there, and then in the other panel here, be going into this back loop. So we're not going to want to go through both of them, just that back loop there, and get our end piece over the top, get our working yarn on the hook, and we're going to pull through both of those, have 2 loops on your hook, and then pull through both of those. Alright, so we're just going to keep doing that over and over all the way until we get to the other end. Just make sure that you stay in those back loops of the panels, and it makes a pretty neat seamless finish. Just sewing these things on. Sewing these things together. That makes sense. I'll meet you guys back at the other end. Okay, so now what you should have is something that looks like this. I just think that looks so neat. Instead of just like sewing it in with your darn needle. I don't know. I prefer it this way. And in the end, it ends up looking like this. So that's the part we're working on right now. And we're just sewing all of our panels together. All right. So now that we're getting towards the end here, what I like to do is go into the corners here, do a single crochet, and then I don't cut my string off. What I end up doing is, and just make sure you take your time with this so it doesn't get too confusing, because it can easily. What I do is I'll fold my corners like this and think, okay, this is the beginning of my purse. So this is the unsewn end. So I'm going to flip it over, and as you can see, this is this end. This is the side that we sewn together. So now we need a panel on this side. And to do that, I keep these like that. I keep these panels folded up like this, and I get my third panel and I lay it in a way that I know it's going to match up with the other ones. Like that. So I just fold it in half, line it up with this side, and then I know what side to work on so that it's a seamless effect all the way to the other side of the bag. So now I'm going to turn my work, get my loop back on my hook, and we want this side connected with this side. So now that we have everything lined up the way we want it to make it easier, we can unfold our squares back, get it nice and lined up again, like that, and then we can work down the line. And now to do that, we're going to go into this corner of our new panel and just slip stitch that, line everything back up, and make sure that slip stitch is nice and tight so it doesn't look loose when you're all done. And we're just going to keep working in these back loops. And there's the other one right there. All right. So I'm gonna go in that back loop and into that one. Single crochet. Just gonna keep on going down the line. Okay, so once you make it back to the other side, I will meet you here. I'm gonna do the rest of this off camera. Okay, so now that these two panels are sewn together, all we're gonna do now is just pull our hook up a little, take your scissors and snip your yarn. Cut your yarn. We're gonna pull that, and then we're just going to sew your end in. Okay, so now your purse should be looking something like this. And that's one side done. And then this is what the other side's gonna be. Before we sew all of these in, we're gonna wanna get our fabric in. So if you're doing fabric, follow along. If not, skip past this part and meet me back in the video where I sew these up and we work on the rest of the purse. All right, so next thing you're gonna need is your fabric. You're also going to need some thread and a needle. And what we're gonna do is get our fabric ready. So for this purse, I'm probably gonna use this one here because I think that looks really cute. And we're gonna open our panels back up. Okay, and basically what we're gonna do is open up our fabric. Now if you go to like Michael's or Hobby Lobby, you could honestly take these panels in and just have them cut you something exact, or just measure your panels out here and figure out, you know, a good measurement and have them cut that fabric. But what I like about these little packs at Michael's is these are kind of the perfect size. So what I do is I just try my best to measure everything up as best as I can here. And then I will do my best to cut the fabric that's along the side like this. So I'll get my scissors. Everything is lined up as good as I can, and this is easiest to do on a table. And it doesn't have to be super exact for the cutting, because we can always fold this over to make it look a little bit more, a little bit better, a little bit more presentable. So I'm gonna just cut down some more. Make sure you're not cutting your work. Okay, and then I'm just going to cut over this side. And if there is a better way that you figured out that you can sew everything on, or you have a different process of how you do it, go ahead and do it that way as well. This is just the way that I've learned how to do it. But there are multiple ways to sew fabric onto crochet. So there isn't just this is how you do it or it's wrong. All right, so what you want to do is keep your fabric right side up. So here's the back side. We don't want to see that side. We want to keep it here. And then you want to find something that you can use to help hold your fabric down while you're sewing. What I use are these little sewing needle thingamabobs. I don't know exactly what they're called, but I just use these to hold it down. But I'm sure you could use like bobby pins, or I don't know, I'm sure some people get really creative. Okay, so now that you have everything lined up how you want it, we're going to, if you have like extra fabric hanging over, that's perfect, because then you can fold it. Let me zoom you out here a little. You can fold it over. So we want this last row of color to be out. We don't want to sew our fabric all the way to here, because we're going to need to work in these loops to finish sewing our purse together. So we want to make sure that we want to get our fabric about there, so where that this is showing at least, and we're not covering our stitches up here. So what I like to do is just go around. I'll get everything laid super flat, everything lined up, and then I just go around and kind of decide how I like my fabric to look and how I want to sew it on. So I'll fold mine over like that, and then I'll take my little needles here and just kind of stick them in place so that my fabric doesn't move when I'm sewing everything together. Just like that. And these things, if I remember right, they were super cheap, so they're worth investing in if you plan to make quite a bit of purses, or even plan on sewing other things. Like I've seen people sew blankets, fabric onto the back of blankets, and I totally want to do that. So I just don't want to make a blanket. All right, enough yapping from me. I'm going to just finish up going around, taking my time, making this fabric look nice and neat, so that when I'm ready to start sewing, I don't have to go back and keep fixing things. So I'll meet you when I'm done with this part. Okay, so now that you have everything pinned into place, should look something like this. Just everything is nice, nothing's going anywhere. Nice and put together and held on. So all you're gonna do is start, find a place to start. Get your needle and thread ready. I'm just using white thread. I've also seen people take like a weight 2 or a weight 3 yarn. So if you have something that's super thin, you could use that too if it matches. But I don't think I really do. I'm trying to look. But whatever. I just use yarn, a white yarn. You don't really notice it. I mean, you can kind of see it on the purse on the inside, but it's nothing that's like super duper noticeable. But if you're a stickler and you like want it to look an exact certain way, I would do that. I would use the same yarn or a yarn that's a similar color, or do it however you want. That's what's nice about this purse, is it's so customizable. All we're doing is just getting our thread on our needle here, and I'm just tying it into place. Okay, now that I have my thread tied onto my needle and it's on there pretty good, I'll just pull out a decent amount of thread and then cut it off. You don't want to do too much, because when you're trying to thread it, so when you're trying to sew it into here onto your fabric, it can get tangled, and then it just makes the process a million times longer. So I just get a good decent amount. Okay, so now that you have your thread and needle ready, All we're doing is, you can start on this side or you can start back here. It really is up to you. But I usually start on this side and I'll go through and I'll try and go into these clusters of the double crochets. And what I'll do is just put my needle through the thread and through that first double crochet. Pull those both through. Oh, I must be stuck on something here. And then before you pull your thread all the way through, what I like to do is make a little loop. Okay, so there is my loop, and I like to keep that there. It lets me know when I'm back to where I started at. So now that I got that started, I'm just going to go through these 2 double crochets here and back into the fabric like that. Okay, and then I'm going to pull that all the way through. And then as you can see, as I'm pulling my threading through, it essentially disappears. Unless you're like really looking, you're not going to see it. Basically, all I'm going to be doing all the way around. Just remember when you're going back one side and in one side to remember where you went the last time, if that makes sense. So since we came up through here, we're going to go back down into that double crochet. Pull everything through. And then remember not to go, don't start back through here again. Make sure you go through them 2 double crochets and then back up. Like that. And then as you work along, you can move your little holders and just keep powering through. It all depends also on how well you want your fabric to be held down. If you plan on using this bag quite a bit, I would take more time and sew everything down really well so that way it won't come apart after so many uses. And it's just, the more time you take on it, the better it's going to be made. So don't try and rush on this part. I know it can be a little time consuming. It'd be a lot quicker if you had like a sewing machine, but I currently do not. So I'm just hand sewing. It is what it is, right? All right, well, I'm going to keep doing this and I will meet you guys when I am all done. Also, one thing that I like to do when I run out of thread is I'll cut my thread off my needle, tie it on back to the new thread, and then pull off more as I need. Just like that, and I'll make a little knot. Okay, so I thought I was recording and I wasn't, but basically what I did was I took my needle and this was my ending point. That loop that we started off with and left here, I just basically took my needle and went through the loop, pulled it tight, and made a knot. And that's what this is here. And then with the rest of my thread that I had on my needle, I just basically wove it through the crocheted side to hide it in there. And I went, just a couple of different ways. So that's basically all I did. Super simple. And then now we're done with our fabric. It should be on there nice and tight. And it should be to your liking. So now we gotta make our purse here into a big V. And we're gonna stitch these sides over on this side of the purse. So to do that, we're gonna want it to look like this side. We're gonna start over here in this corner and get our 2 panels up side by side like this. And we're gonna start down here. So you're gonna get your hook and your yarn, go into that corner here on both sides, put your yarn on your hook and pull through. And we're just going to do the same thing like we did before. We're going to be going into these back loops, and I'm going to be making sure I got my tail end in there as well, and we're just making single crochets. So back loop, pulling through, drop your loop, grab your working yarn, and going through both of those. And we're basically just going to do this all the way until we reach the other corner, and I'll meet you guys back here. Okay, so now I made it back to the other side here. This is what it's looking like. So now we can pull our yarn up here and look again to make sure our purse is shaped the way that we want it. So what we're going to do is just open that pocket and fold this part down, and there's half of our bag. So now we know we need to pull this side over and sew down the middle here. So I'll show that again. This is what it's going to look like. You're just opening this pocket here and pulling that towards that V. Alrighty, so now that we're on the next side, we can take these two panels and fold them in half so it's easier to work on, and we're just going to keep on going. I'm going to go under there, single crochet to those back loops, and we're just going to basically do the same exact thing all the way until we reach this side, the other corner. So I'll meet you guys when we get here. Okay, so I just made my last single crochet. I'm actually going to go into here one more time. Alright, so now this is what your bag should look like on the other side. And all we're going to do is just cut our yarn, pull that loop up, and we're going to take our darning needle and sew this end into the bag so that it's nice and secure and we don't have to worry about our bag opening. And I'm just going to go through our single crochet here because those are nice and tight together. And I'll just go through one more time and back out that way. All right. Snip that. All right, so far your bag should look a little something like this. We don't have handles yet. So we're almost done. So all we need to do now is make the strap for the bag and our flower. And then we're done. Your strap, it is pretty simple. All you're gonna do is take the yarn of your choosing. I'm gonna be using this pink twinkle yarn again. And we're going to start with a slip knot. So like we did before, all we're doing is taking our yarn, putting it over our finger and wrapping it twice. And then the yarn that is closest to your hand, we're going to be pulling that over, holding it, and then pulling that other yarn over and through, and then that should make a slip knot like that. So we're going to put our hook in, Pull it down, get it tight. Now we're going to chain 100. So make sure you don't lose count. You can chain less than that or more than that. It's all about how long you want your strap to be for your bag. For the chain 100, that brings the bag about to hip length for me, and I'm 5'5". So if you want it longer than that, I would do more like 150, maybe 200 chains. Or if you want it shorter than that, maybe do like 80 chains. So let's get started. We're just going to chain 100. So we're just pulling the yarn through. So that'd be 1. This is 2, 3, 4, 5, and it should be looking something like this. So I'm going to do the rest off camera, chain however many you feel like you want, and then I'll meet you guys back at the end. Okay, so once you have 100, it should look something like this. Now some people like to do a single crochet if they want a tighter stitch. I'm going to be doing a double crochet just like we've been doing for the rest of the bag. I just think it's easier since we've been doing it already. So what we're going to do is go into that second chain here, and we're going to yarn over and go through that chain. Then we're going to yarn over again and pull through. And we should have 3 loops on our hook. Yarn over, pull through 2 of those loops. Should have 2 left, and pull through 2 again. And we're just going to do that all the way down until you get to the other end there. So I'll do it again into that second chain, yarn over 2, yarn over 2 more. And now I know like sometimes when you're working in chains, it can be a little deceiving. So we worked into this one, and to a new set of eyes that aren't too familiar with crochet, it almost looks as if that chain is open. So you got to pay attention, and if it helps, pull up on that last double crochet that you just worked in. And as you can see, we already have worked into that chain, so we need to work into the next one. That's one common mistake I've made when I first started crocheting. I would think, oh, okay, my chain, that's the chain right here that I need to work in, but really it was the following one, because it looks like I could work in that one again. So just be mindful of that. And just take your time and make sure that your stitches aren't super tight, because if they're super tight, it's gonna kind of make your strap tight on one side, and it's gonna just have kind of sort of a funny shape, if that makes sense. So just be mindful on how tight your double crochets are down your chain. You don't want to do them like super loose, but not super duper tight either. So just kind of take your time. Alright, I will meet you guys back on the other end. Okay, so this is what your strap should be looking like so far with all of your double crochets. If it's a little twisty, that is completely fine too. You're going to chain 2 like that, turn your work, and then go into that very first double crochet there. And then as you work your way down back to the other side, just make sure that you're going into that very last double crochet. So when you're looking at that, make sure when you're at the end and you see these last 2, this one can kind of hide and get a little tight. So just make sure that when you make it to that one, you're double checking the side there and grabbing that last double crochet. Alrighty, I'm gonna work on this. I usually do about 4 rounds of the double crochet. So this would be my first round, then I'll go back and forth another 3 times to make a total of 4 rounds. I usually prefer that thickness for my strap. If you want your strap to be thinner, you could maybe do like just 2 rounds, or if you want to be thicker, you can do more than 4. It's all up to you really, and it also depends on how big your bag is, like how big you made your panels. You know, if you made a pretty big one, you're probably going to want a thicker strap because it's going to be more comfortable to carry around. If you made one a lot smaller, then you don't need that big of that thick of a strap. But okay, I'll meet you guys back when I have 4 rows of double crochets. Okay, so this is what your strap should look like after you've done 4 rounds. Should look something like that, or 4 rows of double crochet. And then once you get to the end here, all I do is just chain 1 and then cut my yarn. So sew this end in nice and snug, and then do the same on this one, and I'll meet you guys back to attach it to our bag. Okay, so to attach it to the bag, we're going to be working in these top corners here of the bag. So there's the bottom, and then here's the top corners. So what we're going to do is go to one corner. It's okay if some of the fabric's in the way there. We're going to be able to work around that. And basically all we're doing is taking one side of our strap and putting it up to the corner like that, and we're just going to cut some of our yarn, get it on our darning needle here like that, and we're just going to take our time and get everything level to how we like it. I don't mind it like that. And then we're just basically going to work in and out. And make sure you're leaving a long enough tail to be able to sew that in once you're done sewing the strap on. So I usually just go around the corner here. Just take my time, make sure things are situated on how I like them, and then I'll even go back over again. Because you have to remember, this is what's going to be holding your bag. So the heavier your bag is, the stronger that strap is going to need to be on there. Because if you have a lot of heavy things in your bag, or if you use it a lot, you're going to want that strap on there nice and tight. And then I'll even go to the back side here, and I'll just kind of quickly weave in, oops, it's getting caught with my end there, quickly weave in this side as well, so it's just even all that more tight. That, and then I'll even bring these corners down some so they're not sticking out, and then I'm just going to sew in this end like that, pull it through, then we can cut that, and then sew in this end as well. We don't see that. I kind of just pull it a little bit so it ends up looking like that. Alrighty, So now when you go to do the other side here, make sure that your strap is nice and straight so that when you go to put it on, it's not twisted. So go ahead and do the other side. Just take your time, and then I will meet you guys once this side is done. Okay, so here's what your purse should be looking like. Should look the same on both ends, and then the strap here. Now, if you think this is good enough, you can end the video here if you'd like, but I like to go one step further and add the flower. So let's make this flower really quick. It comes up together super fast, so we'll make this and that'll be the end of the video. Alright, to make the flower, you're going to grab your green yarn or whatever color of choosing that you want, and we're going to be doing a magic ring again. So pull that loop there. Okay, and once you have your magic circle, you're going to single crochet 6 times into your magic ring. So you're going to go 1, I'm going to pull up a loop, and then yarn through both loops. So pull up a loop, go through your magic ring, magic circle, whatever you want to call it. You should have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3. So we have 2 so far, and we need another 4. Three, 4, 5, and 6. Alrighty, so now that you have 6 single crochets in your magic circle, you can go ahead and pull it shut. You're going to grab a stitch marker, or even you can even use a cut off piece of yarn as a marker. So what we're going to do is find our very first single crochet, which would be this one here, and we're going to make another single crochet in that one. We're basically going to join this circle. So we got our hook in, and then we're going to grab our working yarn, yarn over, and pull through. You should have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through all 3 of those. Alright, now insert your stitch marker into that single crochet that you made. So it would be this one here, because that's where we joined, and that's going to be our first our first single crochet for the second round. And we're basically just going to increase in every stitch till we have a total of 6 single crochets. So back into that same single crochet that we worked into, go back into there and make another single crochet. And we're going to do that all the way around. So 2 single crochets into each single crochet, or each stitch. And you should have a total of 12 when you're done. Okay, so there's 12. Now what we're going to do is take our stitch marker out, insert our hook where that stitch marker was, and pull back through with your yarn, And then we're going to make a slip stitch. So just pull through that other loop that was on your hook. Now pull this up a little bit and put your stitch marker into that loop. And close your stitch marker and you can pull that down. So this is basically like a live round. We're not done with this and we're not going to cut off our string. We're just going to keep it like that. Now grab whatever color you want to use to make your petals. So to make our petals, we're going to go into this stitch here, very first one, not this one, but this one here. It's our first single crochet. So we're going to put our hook in there, and I'm going to do that dusty rose color for the yarn for the color of my petals. Just going to hook our color on there and pull through. And then we're going to slip stitch to secure that, and we can pull that yarn end to make it nice and tight. You're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Alright, so we're going to be working in the same stitch, and we're going to be needing to do a double treble crochet. So we're going to do a double treble now. So we have to wrap our yarn over our hook 3 times. So you have 1, 2, 3 loops on your hook, and then you're going to go back into that same stitch, single crochet, insert your hook, and then grab your working yarn. And this is what your hook should look like. You should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on your hook. You're going to grab your working yarn again, and we're basically going to be pulling through the first 2 like this. Now usually what I do to make it easier for myself is I'll just pull that second loop through. We're going to do it again. 1 and 2 like that, and then we should have 3 loops left on our hook. So yarn over again, pull through 2 more. We'll have 2 left. We're going to yarn over. Oops. Yarn over and pull through those 2. And then your stitch should look something like that. And we're going to make this one more time. So we're going to yarn over 3 times. And in that same stitch, go through. We're going to yarn over, pull our working yarn through those first 2 loops. So go through those 2 loops and those 2. So now you should have a total of 2 of these double trebles in your chain 4, all in that same stitch. And then we're going to do 2 more of these double trebles into the next stitch. Oops, I'm going to start that over. 3 to that next stitch. And these can be a little bit tricky. There's just so much going on all at once. So just take your time until you get the hang of it. Because when I first started this, it was pretty tricky, but I just had to do it over a few times, and I eventually got it. Okay, so now that you have 2 in that following stitch, you're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then insert your hook back into that same stitch. Pull through and slip stitch. Then you're going to chain 1, then go into the next stitch and slip stitch. And that's basically it. So you want a total of 6 of these. And the pattern is chain 4, 2 double trebles all in the same stitch. Go to the next stitch, do 2 more double trebles, chain 4, slip stitch into that same stitch, chain 1, and then repeat. Alright, I will meet you guys when I'm at the end of this and I have 6 of these petals. Okay, so I did notice that I ended up saying 6 petals, but I meant to say 5, so you should end up with 5. Alright, so now that you have your 5 petals, once you've finished slip stitching there, you can just cut that yarn like that and just pull through, and we're gonna weave this in later. And then you can grab another color, or if you want to use that same color, you can. And if you do end up using the same color, don't snip it, you can keep going. So the next thing we'll do will be, we're gonna go into this round here and insert our hook, and then we're going to grab our new color of choice, insert our hook through that little slip stitch. Alright, so now that we have our hook through there, we're going to just slip stitch 1, and then we're going to chain 5. Do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And once we have 5 chains, we're going to go and single crochet into these top double trebles that we made. And we're going to do 4 of those. So there's 1, there's 2, 3, and 4. And then once you got that, we're going to chain 5 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we're going to go back into that little chain 1 we made and insert our hook and just do a slip knot like that. So just pull your hook, your yarn through and slip it through there. And then again, you're gonna chain 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then go and make a single crochet through these in these double trebles that we made. We want 4 of those. And then you're going to chain 5 and slip stitch back into that chain 1 down there. Alright, go ahead and finish that up and then I'll meet you guys at the end. We're almost done. Okay, so I'm just on my last petal here and I just need to chain 5. And then we're just going to go back into, it doesn't really matter, you can go into that side or back into this chain in here, just as long as you single crochet, just as long as you slip stitch it into something secure. Alright, so this is what it should look like. Very cute. We're going to snip our yarn now. and just pull that through. And then if you want, you can start sewing in these ends if that makes it a little less confusing for you. But now we just have one thing left to do, and that is to come back to this stitch marker here and kind of wiggle that up until you can see your loop again. Take your stitch marker out, put your hook in there, and then find that working green yarn again. And just make sure that you can kind of get this yarn out of your way. Alright, we got our green yarn. So all we're going to do now is just make a long chain. Now if you want to do a shorter chain like this, I believe it was 50 or 60 chains. I think it was 50. But if you want it to hang further down on your purse, make the chain longer. 100 would be like halfway down the purse, and then anything less than that will be a little bit shorter up on the purse. So I'll do 100 and show you guys what it looks like. So just grab your yarn, and then you just gotta chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm gonna keep going, and I'll meet you guys once I get to 100. Okay, so I made 100 chains, and then all you have to do is just insert it back into one of these top stitches. Doesn't have to be an exact stitch, just something that's up on the top there, like there. And then just make a slip stitch. So that's just pulling through 2. And then that's it. You just cut your yarn, and then we're gonna sew all these ends in, and that's the end of it. And then I like to try and sew in my ends and match them up to what color they're in, or what color they are. I like to try and match them in that. So like, since that darker pink matches with the petal, I will just slide that through the petal there. And I'm trying to just kind of straighten things out as I go. I just threw my needle. And then I just have a couple more strands left to weave in. Since these pink ones, these lighter pink ones don't really, like this part's too skinny, I just kind of sew it in that dark pink one as well. And it's not too noticeable. And then little stubborn ones like that, I try and just tuck it in there with my needle. Okay, and this is what your flower should look like when it's all done. And the way I just attach it to the purse is I'll just loop it to either side and then loop it like that, and then kind of just pull it down, fix it how you want. And there you are. Very cute. Okay, so that is the end of this tutorial, and here is the bag. Came out very cute. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this tutorial, let me know in the comments. This is my very first tutorial, so I'm sure there's like things I could have done better or things I could change for next time. So if you have any helpful tips or tricks, just let me know down in the comments. But thank you so much if you've made it this all the way to the end. And subscribe if you'd like to see more of my content, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.